Hey, everybody. Tag team back again. We are excited about this second watch on the second Sunday as we share in sermon chat where Reverend Maria and I jump on as soon as the worship experience is over and take your questions on the sermon or faith matters in general. As you know, we are in a series dealing with mental health this month and series called How to Deal with Depression Part 2. I want to encourage you, if you don't have the app, go download the app, check out the sermon notes there. And we have therapists, licensed, trained people who do this. And today I'm excited. One of our faithful members, great servants, Sister Suzette Johnson, who wears two hats. And I'm hoping that we'll get questions. Not only is she a high school teacher teaching at Broward County Schools, Hallandale High, but she's also completed all of the coursework, and she is let me get her correct title. She is a registered clinical intern where her client base is couples, individuals, and teenagers that she sees. Y'all see, she's straight high tech. I'm about to go get Trey Dre beats that we bought him for Christmas because she got doggone fancy headphones over there. She gonna hear everything we talking today. And so I want you to share this feed on all platforms. If you have children, grandchildren, or just yourself, that you want to ask questions about depression. And again, she said that she has not received any calls from any members, any kingdom partners. So I pray that we are taking full advantage of these opportunities. Again, as we said after the 7:30 chat, at the 7:30 chat, we know some people don't want necessarily to see a member, but they can refer you to someone that says, okay, hey, go check this person, go see this person, here's a number. Because one of the things about finding a therapist is you want to have a referral. You just don't want to just go find somebody in Google. So you want to find a referral, somebody who's seen somebody to make sure that they ain't cray-cray. So that's that. So Reverend Maria is sharing it on her platform, and I'm sharing it. Good morning, Sister Suzette. Thank you so much for joining us, taking out your time, and I'm excited about this conversation.
Good morning to both of my pastors this morning. How well are you both?
We're pressing on. Reverend Maria's a little under the weather, so y'all pray much her strength. She was supposed to go preach this morning, but early in the morning, like when Jesus got up that early in the morning, she said, I'm really not feeling well. Can you go preach for me? And I said, sure. I'll be the ram in the bush. I'll be the sacrificial lamb. So that's why I'm not in uniform. I slid over to Mount Tabor Baptist for their early service and got in on the chat. Pastor let me use his office. And so I came back home. I was trying to find Reb some to help her with her situation. But as soon as we get off this chat, I'm going straightway to help her get healed, delivered, and set free. Joy has already prayed for her, so we are believing it's done. She just got to let the situation be the situation and move forward. Get us some rest and some relaxation. She won't be watching the Super Bowl this evening, and so we're going to put her in the bed and go from there. I saw you look on me on my side. I go ahead and say hey to the people.
Hey, people. Not much more for me to say. Hey, people. Good morning, everybody.
All right. So, do you have any pre-log questions, Reverend? I'm sharing this feed on these platforms that I'm on. And so do you have any pre-log questions, Reverend?
Oh, no, I don't. I actually don't. So take it away, Pastor.
All right, let me share this.
Well, I'll ask a question while
ahead.
you're doing that. Mm-hmm. Would you tell us what has been the most eye-opening part of this new work that you're doing? What's been most eye-opening for you?
The most eye-opening for me is that as we entered into this pandemic time, that a lot of things that were not dealt with pre-COVID are now magnified now, especially with our young
Mm,
people. If they were challenged with depression pre-COVID, they're really challenged now. If they were challenged academically pre-COVID, they're really challenged now. So I'm seeing, and it's really just been an eye opener for me at the different levels that, and I'm speaking specifically to our young people because I work with them every day, and the how it has just blown itself up, as the young people would say, with what they've been feeling, what they've been dealing with pre the pandemic. And now we're forced to deal with it. And hopefully, we're dealing with it in a way that is healthy for them, because the focus is so much on the adults and not our children and our teenagers and young adults.
yeah, I think, Sister Suzette, I will never forget the one day I was visiting a school, going to talk to a principal, and I literally saw a parent cuss her child out in the front of the office. And the principal said, Pastor, you came in the right time. Come on back. Let's talk about it. I need your help. And to hear them unpack what was going on with the child. The child, the mother was holding a friend's drug money and drugs. And the child smoked the drugs and stole the money. And the mama said he got to go. And I was just shocked that I was like, am I getting pumped? Is this real? And it was very real. And so I think my heart goes out to educators. That's why we do Teachers Appreciation Week at the level we do it, because I don't think particularly the inner city schools don't get the support and appreciation from parents or the community. So that's why I think, to me, we're a part of that village in doing that. We've got a question here from Facebook. YouTube, is your time. So come on. How do you encourage children who have parents that are going through depression or any type of mental illness? Great question.
That is a great question. And the first place we need to start, and Pastor, you've already kind of answered this question, is we need to have the village. Children should be involved in other activities if the parents are mentally healthy to be able to do that, to keep them involved in their community, keep them involved in their village so that they don't find themselves alone with their thoughts. And I know we're speaking about depression, but I think it's important to realize that for our young people, depression often leads to suicide. And that is
Mm-hmm.
because they're often left with their thoughts that they do not know how to redirect. And sometimes they don't know what to do with those thoughts. So keeping kids involved, when parents are involved doing so many other things, and we know that right now during this pandemic, that is what's happening. So if we could keep them involved in their community, in their village, getting them involved in the church and after school activities, that is very, very helpful for children and teenagers as well.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that. So we have I think Sister Krosky gave us last week, and we're trying to make sure we keep playing it. Here is a mental health crisis support service, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No shade. They don't need to know who you are. They don't need to know if you calling from Opelika, or if you calling from Miami Gardens, if you calling from Pembroke Pines. Here is a number. Please use that number and take advantage of these services. All right. Next question we have here. More of our children are presenting with suicidal intentions. How are you handling that particular issue, and what directions and assistance do you give to our parents on this issue? Because I know you just talked about that, Sister Suzette.
Yes, sir. First of all, we need to start with intentionally paying attention to our children.
Mm,
Intentionally paying attention to our children, their activities, what they're doing, who they're speaking to, what they're doing and watching on these cell phones, as well as, when we see the differences in them. The second thing, which I think is more important, as is most important as well, is listening to them without distraction, listening to them without being on the phone, on the cell phones, letting them know that they are the focus. I am focused on you. So now I have tunnel vision on what you're saying. I'm not on my cell phone, I'm not on my laptop, but you have my full attention.
mm. That's a good point because I know I have a tendency that when Trey is talking to me, I can be doing other things, and then sometimes I've had all right, you got my undivided attention. I take the kids to school, so that's kind of our little prep talk sometimes. Hey, what's going on? And then sometimes Rev will get caught up in a meeting. I'll pick him up. All right, hey, what's going on? Who was that person you were walking with when you was talking to the car? And all of those things are definitely paying attention. I know I've been guilty of it, and I'm trying to do a more effective job of paying attention to Trey and Joey. Uh,
I want to dovetail, just pivot a little bit though, on the presenting issues of school violence. Tomorrow is the anniversary of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. And how are you, same questions basically, how are you handling that particular issue, and what directions and assistance can you give us on that?
That is a very, very good question. And my students that I teach are really helping me deal with that because there are a lot of things still. And I teach ninth grade. So these kids were probably fifth or sixth graders when this actually happened. And there's a lot of things about it that they do not understand, particularly my African American students. And I just kind of, first of all, I got to make sure that I'm in a place that I'm not displaying the fear in the classroom, that it is a safe place to come. Kids are dealing with the cold red drills, the cold yellow drills, so that creates anxiety all on its own. But I try to create a very safe place for my students and a safe place where they know they can come, they can talk to me, and I can be teaching. And if a kid, Miss Johnson, I need to talk. We need to talk right then because I do not want to be on the side of letting that kid get out of my sight or not dealing with that because I am too busy to listen and intentionally pay attention to them, that now we're at another level. We're dealing with the suicide crisis. We're doing with the behavior issue. So it goes back to just being intentionally focused on them, listening to them, and then talking with them and not to them.
Yeah, I know. I was talking with a young person recently who was saying that the increased police presence in school was challenging. And I said, well, that's one of the things that the schools are doing to try to, foster a more safe environment. But here's the other overlay. As an African American student, seeing the police in the school with their hands at their gun at the ready. So you alluded to that, particularly with African American students. Can you talk a little bit more about how we particularly care because of that other overlay of police violence on our kids?
Well, for our kids, they don't feel safe because our
mm,
kids have a totally different um, thought process as it relates to law enforcement. And often they do not feel that law enforcement is available to protect them. And some of the questions that I've gotten, well, Miss Johnson, well, and it goes back to the case. You see someone in the school that is shooting, that has shot and killed 17 people, but and this is exactly how one of my kids put it. But they're still here. How do you
mm.
explain that, Miss Johnson? And I'm honest with them. I have no answers for that. I don't know. I have no answers for that. So our kids are, they're on the seesaw. Are you really here to keep me safe? Or are you really here to keep or create harm for me? Because they
Mm,
are recognizing and they see the differences.
mm. So, for those who just joining us, this is Sermon Chat with Rev Maria, and I jump on as soon as worship is over. We are in a sermon series on mental health and day how to deal with depression, part two, First Kings chapter 19. And so we have one of our members who is a teacher and a clinical intern, almost at the finish line, about to cross over.
Amen.
Uh, and already seeing clients and all that other good stuff. And so, Sister Suzette Johnson, we are so grateful for you. Here's the next question from YouTube. How can we help when traditional school is the very thing that is causing the child the greatest mental health challenge? So Johnson, you and I've had this conversation several times because you lamented to me several times of the challenges of the school system, and staying home is not an option currently.
Again, creating that safe place at home, ensuring that they're getting whatever academic support they need at home. I'd like to say we have to go back. I believe in our community, we have to get back to the basics of the village and putting things in place so that our kids have a safe place where they can go to talk, but then also a safe place where they can go and they can get academic support. That can be tutoring online. It may not be tutoring after school. I know a lot of parents are not really comfortable because of the mental challenges that go on day to day during school hours. They do not want their children to be in that after school. So those are some of the things that I would suggest that could be put in place with relying on the village. Um, Maybe getting some additional academic support for that child, and then therapy. Therapy is very, very helpful for our children because they're not going to tell their parents everything. But a therapist, they would feel safe with, and that therapist would explain to that child, this is a safe place for you as long as you're not going to hurt yourself and as long as you're not going to hurt someone. Because if you tell me that you're going to hurt yourself or hurt someone, then I, of course, need to get mom and dad involved or parents involved and let them know that we need to put together a safety plan at that point.
So let me ask this question, Sister Suzette. I did teach a principal of the day at a school, and another crisis happened, and they asked me to come in and sit in. They brought the psychiatrist in to talk to the student and said we can see each other. Of course, African American was a little hesitant. The psychiatrist or the psychologist was a Jewish guy, so they had some cultural differences. But I do believe by the time we finished the session with the grandparent because the parents had passed, that they got him to agree to seeing the psychiatrist. Are there services in the school systems that most parents don't take advantage of that could be a help and assistance if the parent does not have insurance, does not have an opportunity to see a therapist counselor per se?
Pastor, that is a great question. I'm so glad you asked that question because in Broward County Public Schools, I'm not sure about Dade County, but Broward County Public Schools, we have a licensed marriage and family therapist in most of the schools. And the way that that child gets
Say,
to,
hold up, say that again for the people upstairs in the back so they can hear.
yes, sir, in
And
Broward
I was
County,
in Dade. I was in Dade when that situation. So that means Dade and Broward both have those in place.
right, we have a licensed CSW on our campus as well as a licensed marriage and family therapist. Usually, the way that that child gets those services is a referral from the teacher. The parent can request that the child sees a therapist or the social worker to get that process going. So there are mental health services available. Guidance counselors are no longer kind of functioning in that role because they're more involved with what's going on with the school and testing.
So um, We've got
And if
another
if a
question here.
parent is in
Yes,
Broward
ma'am.
County and they need some assistance with that, they can certainly reach out to me and I can help them with that process. But there are
Okay.
services that are available.
Right. All right. We've got another question here all the way from Germany. Hey, Sister Johnson, charges. How do we motivate our students in today's time? Great question.
Great question. I am still trying to kind of figure that out. Most of our students, and sad to say, in the 21st century, are not motivated because they're challenged learners, and specifically challenged learners that do not read well. So when you are in the eighth grade and you may be reading on the third or fourth grade level, that creates some unmotivation because you just are feeling like no matter what I do, I'm not getting it. I'm struggling. There are a lot of online resources that can help our kids get motivated if they are not motivated academically. Now, if they're not motivated for other reasons, there may have been some trauma. There may have been something that has occurred that parents are not aware of. That's where your mental health professional comes in. You want to start looking at getting that child into therapy to find out what is going on. That could be parents separated, that could be parents that are divorced, that could be grief and loss, because a lot of times with our kids, we will say, here's the key word, they'll be all right, they're okay, they're all right. But we have not really provided them with the necessary mental health support that they really need.
And Sister Suzette, you bring such a wealth of knowledge because for those who don't know, this is Sister Johnson's third career. Started off in corporate America in ATL Himalayas, Decatur, West Greater, and
Hey.
then started teaching, and then went back to school to become a licensed um, therapist and is a licensed clinical intern at this time. What was some of the three things? I'm a preacher, Sister Suzette. What would be three things you think we should be looking for in selecting a therapist? We know one is already a referral. What would be the other three things that you would suggest as we're looking for a therapist?
You want to look at those reviews. Certainly, we talked about a referral. I think that's most important. But you want to look at the reviews. You want to also look at the type of experiences. What does that therapist treat? You don't want to go to a therapist who does not deal with adolescents and teens, but just
Mm.
strictly adults, because that's going to be a different experience. So you want to be sure you are finding a therapist, and this is where you want to get with other clinicians that you may know or that someone else knows, so that you're getting a therapist that is going to be targeted for you and your needs or your family needs and what you all may need.
So, for those who just joining us, this is Sermon Chat where Reverend Marie and I jump on as soon as the sermon is over and take your questions on the sermon, how to deal with depression, part two from First Kings 19, or just faith matters in general. Again, I want to encourage everyone, if you have not downloaded our church app, to do that. There are sermon notes in the app that I think to me are tweetable things, preachers make up words, things that I think are hot button things. I think, ooh, that kind of, like, okay, connected with me that we put there that I would encourage you to go back and look at. I think, and I said this in the sermon, just because you are a saint, a disciple, does not mean you won't get depressed. And and to me, today's sermon was, I made this point, I kind of drove this point home more. Sometimes things we think are huge, we've got to put them in context. And sometimes, I quoted the song, "Don't let it go to your head." And I think that's what Elijah did. I think, how can you help us, Sister Suzette, when we see things going down a road, to get help quicker instead of letting molehills turn into mountains?
I think that comes with the paradigm shift. A lot of times,
Mm.
people think you only go to a therapist when things are not going right. Couples
Mm-hmm.
that I see, they only want to come to the therapist when things are not right. But if you see the therapist before you get to that point, then you already have those tools to work through when those things are not right.
Mm.
So, and this
Say
is
that one more
how
time. Say that one more time, Sister Suzette. Couples only want to come see you when things are falling apart, but they need to be coming to see you before that so they'll have the tools. Say that again, because for the people in the back.
you want to, you don't have a relationship with your therapist before you get to the place that you want a divorce, before you get to that place that you're holding unforgiveness. It's just like premarital counseling. Premarital counseling gives you the tools before you go into that place of I do. It is a different place than when you're dating. So when you go into premarital counseling to get those tools, now you have that those tools before you get into that place of I do. When you get to that place of I do, you want to have a therapist that you can go and see. You may just need to see that therapist once a month, but then you're getting those tools and learning how to communicate, parenting tools, because there's not a manual that tells us how to be parents or even tells us how to be a husband and wife other than the Holy Bible. But we sometimes we need more practical things to also go to couple with that.
I had a follow-up question
Go
just
ahead.
before we go here. Can you, going back to children, can you talk about some everyday things that are accessible to our children that might help them process emotions when they may not be particularly verbal about expressing them? I know that some people have talked about the benefits of having pets or other things. What kind of everyday things help children kind of navigate and process what they're feeling?
Pat, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
We all know where you stand on that, but
Okay.
go ahead. Let's let the licensed
Mm-hmm. All right. Go ahead, Sister.
Dinner time, puzzles, journaling, and I'm speaking of these activities as a family. Dinner time, having conversation that's not often on the run where dinner is in the car, but actually sitting down to that table and making that a safe place. Working on puzzles together because you're doing activities now that's going to just generate conversation because of the activities. You're not in a situation where you're questioning, it's not an intimidating time. Getting a good book and sharing a book. And conversations will be generated out of that because you're reading that book. So walks in the park, going to walk at the park, playing games, getting outside, doing those things that typically society does not allow for us to do because we're so busy.
Okay. All right. We're going to bypass that last comment. All right. If you are a member of our village and one of the children in your village come to you in confidence, how do you go to the parent with concerns of the child with making the child feels
Wow.
without making the child feel as if you snitched them out? Because snitches get stitches. All right. So how do we deal with this one, Sister Suzette?
I would say it depends on the issue. As I was speaking earlier today, that if it's something where that child is going to possibly cause harm to themselves or
Mm,
harm to someone else, you want to get the parent involved, and sometimes we even may need to get law enforcement involved, depending on what it is. If it is something that you really feel that you need to disclose to the parent, I would suggest that you seek out professional counseling first, because we don't want to put that child in a situation where now their safety is compromised because they may have shared something that could be going on in the home that the parent does not want anyone to know anything about.
that's good. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Is it helpful to let the child know when you enter into a kind of a mentoring or confidential relationship like that, that you, like you said earlier, give them some parameters going into a relationship like that potentially, so that they will know that there will be some things that you might have to share for their safety.
Yes, it is okay. And as licensed clinicians, that's the first thing that we tell everyone, couples, individuals. We have to report. We're mandatory reporters.
All right, for those who just joining us, this is Sermon Chat where Rev Maria and I jump on as soon as worship is over. I am so pleased and honored, or we are so pleased and honored to have one of our members, Sister Suzette Johnson, who brings a wealth of experiences as a first a former corporate person, and then school teacher where she's still teaching school in Broward County, and now has ventured into her newest career field where she's going to be transitioning out of school as a licensed clinical intern, and with and she's already seeing clients. Her areas of focus are couples, um, and children, adolescents specifically, uh, and individuals. And so we're grateful. So we've got time for a couple more questions. Facebook, YouTube. We don't want to tie up Sister Suzette's day. You know, Super Bowl's coming, so you got to go get the chicken wings straight, and go from there. So we've got time for a couple of more questions. So if you have them, please drop them in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable there, email us or send a pigeon to the studio, and we'll get that question and share that without sharing a name. All right, Reverend, you got any other questions, pre-live questions, or any other questions that we haven't addressed?
I think I just wanted to also ask about, um, you mentioned cell phones. Can you talk more about that and the sticky realities of our children having cell phones in their hands and the impact on mental health and how to deal with that as a parent?
Cell phones are an addiction. Take a cell phone or have a kid give you their cell phone in class, parents come out of the woodwork because that phone has been confiscated. Our kids heavily rely on them. That's just the world that we live in. I think, and I believe I heard last week, Reverend Maria, you said that you are that kind of parent. Parents need to be that kind of parent. It is so important to know what their
Y'all
child
in your midst.
Trying to keep you safe.
and we need that because we need to know what our kids are watching, what our kids are listening to. If you notice, we have a lot of rage going on with young people now, a lot of fighting. They're angry. A lot of it is coming from what they're seeing on these screens. The screen time, they're only watching violence, they're only watching rage, they're only, weapons. That's all they're seeing. So what do they do with all of that when that's inside? It has to
Yeah,
come out.
yeah. We made a conscientious decision when Trey was smaller, not to allow Trey and now Joey to play any games with violence. No shooting
With
with
weapons.
weapons. I'm sorry,
With guns.
with guns. So no
All the games
no
are violent.
all the games with
Football.
violence. Footballs, yes, but
All the
no
games are
shooting.
violent.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
No,
but no
no
shooting,
guns.
no guns. And so
No toy
he
guns. No, video games with guns.
video
Go
games
ahead.
with guns. So they even got
Weapons.
pushback from family members and their friends because there were certain games that they could. What was the name of that popular
It's a
game?
bunch of games. They didn't
Um,
play. They didn't play
Fortnite.
Fortnite for the
And
longest time,
so
and then when they did, it was a different version of it that
right.
minimized that. And I'm glad you brought that up
Hmm.
because everybody's going to do this the way that they know best to do. But I've tried to talk to them. We've tried to have conversations with them from when they were young about the things that we thought were out of bounds. And so if they go to other people's homes, they've already been told since they were very young, I don't play with weapons. And even when they've gotten older and people try to tease them about it, they've been so instilled in that from such a young age that they just kind of shake it off.
Hmm.
We know we can't monitor everything, but that doesn't mean we don't monitor anything. And we try to let them know you're being monitored now.
Hmm.
It's not like it's a surprise. And that's why I kind of asked you that other question, because I think the whoops surprise situation, it may be warranted at some point, but we've tried to foster with them an openness so that when we put things in their hands, like a computer, a phone, I mean, which is a little computer, that we've already set boundaries, we've already explained our approach to it, and kind of the family way that we're handling those things.
And which leads into and we talked about this a little bit, fleshed this out a little bit last week, and along the same lines where Maria's saying now about we're in their space, so we're checking cell phones, rooms, book bags, social media accounts, so we can make sure that this is our house. We paying the bills here.
And I said it that way.
This is my house. Okay, I'm sorry.
I said it that way last week, but it's not just that. It's a kind of a comprehensive approach. They see us using our phones all the time, so we're not telling them to do as we say, but not as we do. So we're talking to them about what is responsible, how you have to guard your heart. We haven't had much overt conversation about biblical wisdom, but we share with them the biblical wisdom that applies to what's going on with you at school, what's going on with you on that phone, And even with all that, we recognize they are little humans. And like all humans, they will sin and fall short of the glory of God. But at least we feel like the approach we've taken with them, we're trying to let them know we're here with you, we're walking with you, and we see you.
And see,
but you guys, your rhythms.
And Sister Suzette, and the ghetto version, don't try us. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Your rhythm in your family, you have syncopated your rhythms and boundaries. Parents, it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to have structure.
One more time for the people in the back, Sister.
It's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to have structure. You just have to find what boundaries and what structure works well for you and your family. But
all right, we got a couple more questions, so we're gonna get out of here. How can we recognize depression? This is a great question, Reverend Andrea. How can we recognize depression in our kids, and what can we do to make sure we are helping them through it?
The first place is in recognizing and understanding what they do. If you have a kid who's been a straight A student and then all of a sudden those grades plummet, or you have a student who was actively in their academics and now they have no desire, they don't want to do anything, they don't want to get up, they're not wanting to be involved, you want to pay attention to that behavior. The other three things that I like to suggest is that you want to be intentional with them, you want to listen to them, and then you want to, as the kids see them and hear them.
That's good.
And that helps them will help the parent kind of work through that depression, because now you have a kid that is clinically depressed, because when they don't want to do anything, they're not involved. You've seen a totally opposite kid. So, but now there are kids who deal with depression every day. They just don't want to go to school. But they are still functioning. So there's two types going on there. That kid that is like totally have gone from an A student to an F student, and then you have that kid that, they were excited about going to school, but now they don't want to go to school. So you want to use those three things to kind of monitor that.
Okay, this is our last question we're gonna deal with, and we're gonna get out of here. If the whole family is dealing with this heightened anxiety because of the pandemic and other social issues, how do we keep a clear head as a family? What can families do together to help relieve stress? I know you already mentioned earlier, Reverend, that we can, Sister Suzette,
about to give you another title.
But she can't get a prayer through. That we can start eating dinner together and going to do fun activities together. Give me three more that you didn't mention yet.
Take a walk on the park. We live in beautiful South Florida, and I'm amazed at a lot of the kids that I teach that live in Hollandale Beach that have never been to the beach. And these are things, you don't have to spend money. We can take a walk in the park. We can take a long drive. It's pretty especially when the sun is shining. Take a long drive. You want to create activities. You want to do things where they're not so Kids know, okay, well, I know mommy's going to talk to me about this and daddy's going to talk to me about this because now we're sitting at the table in the office, and they know from our body language and so forth. So, the walks in the mall, the walk at the park, working on a puzzle together, choosing a book and reading a book together, working out and exercising together, bicycle riding. Coloring books. Coloring books are great. I recommend coloring books for my couples because they start talking about things that they just didn't even think about talking about. Because now you're in a relaxed state, the body language is relaxed, and you're coloring.
Family game night,
Family
There
game
you
night.
go, family
Family
game
game
night,
night. You
movie
mentioned
nights.
movie
that
nights.
right. You mentioned Sister Suzette that you have children who live in Hallandale, grew up in Hallandale, who had never been to the beach. Um, our first church, well, before we got married, I was pastoring the church in not even in Monticello, but in the country. And I will never forget the church chartered a bus to come to our wedding. And I will never forget, I was just having conversations with them, and I was talking to members. The state capitol in Tallahassee is only 15 miles from where the church is. Same street. I had members who had never been to the state capitol, ever. And so I will never forget when we were in Atlanta, they was looking up, looking down downtown. They were like, Pastor, it's a whole new world up here. Just lack of exposure.
Yeah.
Simply lack of exposure. And I think we all have to try to make sure we're doing a greater job of exposing our kids to things. I think one of the things that we bought is an Oculus. I bought one, but the kids seem like they're playing it more than I am. And it gives you an opportunity to go visit places that you would have never visited, or you can't visit simply as if in this virtual reality piece, as if you're there. I'll never forget, I've been on game drives, but I've never seen elephants.
You
I've
haven't?
never seen elephants on the game
What?
drive. So every game drive I've been on, the elephants either sleep, they don't want to come out. So the virtual reality, Sister Suzette, I had the elephants, and they were all around me. I'm just turning around, like, and it's like I'm like, the trunk is in my face. I'm like, I'm just backing up. So yeah.
One thing I want to say about that is there's a part of me, the journalist, cynical part of me, that's saying somebody might think that's not what Black people do. That's white people stuff. Go take a walk in the park. Let's just not segregate our family health by stereotypes. Let's set that aside, because traveling together, driving in the car, doing things as family, it's not something that's not part of our culture. And if it's not part of our family culture right now, we need to reclaim it and reestablish it as part of our culture.
And Reverend Maria, we could look at it this way. Just simply create new experiences. Do something different. Be open to doing something different.
There are too many young women I know, and I'm only saying women because the young men haven't been in the kitchen with me much, but I know too many young women who say that the women in their family just didn't teach them to cook. They were just like, you know what, we got this.
Help us, Jesus.
And that's a wonderful place to share feelings, thoughts, just be in a space of togetherness.
Wonderful place of conversation. Absolutely.
Because my boys are learning to cook.
Yeah, Maria's taught the kids how to cook and to wash clothes, because I didn't learn how to wash clothes till I went to college. All right. So we got to get out of here, y'all. And we've had a great time in the Lord. Yes, we have to create new experience. For us, it's traveling. So we've allowed our children. One of the things that we've taken our children all over the world intentionally, and we'll keep doing that because we want to create experiences that we can share together and go back and look at. We got one more question. We're gonna get out of it.
That's something that we got both from our families too, because our families took us places, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, we got another question here, and we're gonna get out of here from YouTube. What's the next step once you fully expose your kid to new experiences, and your kid still does a 180?
Can I say that that's what I was alluding to in part when I said no matter what we do, they're still little humans, and just like all humans, they will sin and fall short of the glory of God. I think that's one of the things for me that has been major, to keep my mind set on they're still going to find a way to do what they're determined to do outside of the boundaries of teaching and all of that, just like all of us do.
They're still gonna try. They're still gonna try.
Just like all of us do. And the trying us, even that has to be considered, because if it becomes personally that they tried me, then I may miss an opportunity to see whatever it is that they're struggling with. But I'm going to let you talk into that, because for me, that has helped to say they're human. I can't control everything because they are human.
And you're right, because kids are going to be defiant, kids are going to rebel, kids are going to simply be kids. But when you find a kid that is doing that 180, what is going on with that kid? What has happened to create that behavior? And may want to delve a little deeper and certainly reach out to a mental health professional to see what is going on, or what has gone on that has created that 180.
Okay, I got another question here from came through on the a birdie to the studio.
Can I say one
Yes,
thing
ma'am.
on the tail of that? And also, what might I have missed about my child that this 180 might have had? We might have had some glimpses of it, but for whatever reason, I didn't recognize it, or I wouldn't recognize it. And that also may have to do with the community, what you were saying early on, the village. Are there things that the village hasn't really engaged or could have engaged differently, or we see it but look the other way? I don't, you know what I'm saying? I think those are things to consider as well. And
It
all of
is
that without blaming.
it is because sometimes we see things but we don't want to see them, or we see
Mm-hmm.
them and we're going to come back to deal with them. And I just honestly believe that parents have to give themselves grace, because there's so much going on. And if you miss something, you certainly don't miss it intentionally. You may have missed it because, as I said to Pastor several times, how can I keep a child accountable for home learning when they don't know where they're going to sleep? So that's me
Mm.
as a teacher not missing it. So we have to also extend grace to ourselves, because I believe everybody's doing the best that we can with what we have.
This is the last final question for real this time, Sister Suzette. And this is something that I have been dealing with a lot of members recently. There isn't a manual on how to grow old. So how can we manage no longer being as independent as we'd like to be and having thoughts on being alone? I've been dealing with it from the caregiver side. But can you kind of delve in? And I know, can you kind of delve into that part about growing old and not being as independent and giving? I'm literally walking with a family right now as we speak, of trying to help them to help the person who is being cared for to give up control and allow the caregiver to have other support to help them being cared for. I'm literally walking through that with a family right now.
Well, with that, and with growing old, there's a lot of fear there. Fear of I'm lonely, fear of no one's going to be here, fear that no one's going to help me, but I still don't want to relinquish control to get the help. So with that comes quite a bit of conversation, quite a lot of patience, because you do not want to strong arm anyone to making them do it the way you want them to do it. So, and a lot, and again, with that may come with may that also often requires some clinical help, a mental health professional to help them navigate through that process of aging, because it is a process and it's a serious one, and it becomes even more serious when you're dealing with loneliness.
I think you hit the nail on the head for me, Sister Suzette. One of my approaches is you can't make the people to being cared for, and as I'm sharing with families, you can't make them do what you want them to do. Sometimes you got to let things play out, and it may not be the way you want it to play out, or the way you would let it play out. But you got to just let it take its natural course, and then still be there to provide support and services as much as they will allow you to be at that time.
As long as there's a safety plan and they're safe, and so, and you have some things in place, you have to just allow them to see that they need the help, that they're in a place that, and then they have to be in a place to receive it as well.
Yes.
I love that you said that seeking out some, I think you said clinical help. I love that idea of having, similar to how you were saying, to get the tools of marriage and pre-marriage counseling, to get tools and support for different transitions in life, including the transition of aging. I think that's a wonderful way to look at that, and I don't know that we have spent much time thinking about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there are
Mm-hmm.
therapists that's their specialty. That is all that they do.
Yeah, I think we are both at the age that we have friends who have parents who are dealing with the exact pieces and trying to help them unpack that, from the caregiver and the person who's being cared for. And I'm getting from a pastor from both sides, helping the care. I'm literally last week had a conversation with the caregiver, and then I had to have a conversation with the person being cared for, and then I'm like, all right, y'all, in a couple of days we're gonna all get together, and then let's help put a plan of action together. But I think you mentioned it earlier, Sister Suzette, support groups, that's important. I think if we can get over the pride thing and get over that, the fact that it's okay to not to be okay, and it's not a sin to be sick. And if I gotta go, and I made the point today, we gotta find ways to get help.
And another thing I think we want to pay attention to, and this is kind of a theme that keeps unfolding in this season of identity. Let's watch the stories that we're telling ourselves, the stories that are going on in our minds. I know my parents are both deceased, but when my mother did begin aging, which was very premature, I guess, but in her lifespan, she hit that change in her life where she needed more help. And I realized that, and I've told others this, including you, that don't watch the story you're telling in your head, because I had to deal with the fact that my mother was superwoman. She always had it together. She was a person who handled everything. But as she aged, I found myself to have to grow into some of the ability to handle things that she had always handled. But at first I was resentful, like, why can't you do this? You're supposed to be able to do this. You're supposed to be able to do that. But recognizing that the roles were shifting, illness will certainly shift roles, and the stories that we're telling ourselves about who we are and who they are need to shift along so that we can love unconditionally in the midst of these transitions that we're going through.
Yeah. All right, Sister Suzette, thank you so much. We are in major overtime now. We are almost an hour in, so we definitely got to get out of here. And so I want to thank you, Sister Suzette. I want to thank the tech team behind the scenes, adding up the mental health crisis support, your information as well, putting all the things in the chat. I want to thank everyone for allowing us in your homes. We're in overtime. Y'all go get the chicken wings. I'm about to go get some turkey legs and get ready for the Super Bowl and get me a good after church nap, because I need one. I've been to 3 services a day. I need one. And so, Sister Suzette, you got anything else you want to add?
I just want to add that in dealing when you're a caregiver, in your families, let's just continue to be kind to one another, be mindful of not only what we say, but how we say what we say, when we're caregiver, even with our children and even with our couples to one another.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everybody. Have
you.
a great day. And don't forget to join us on the prayer call tomorrow morning. We've got some powerful anointed men and women of God going to be leading us in prayer. If you've been missing it, I promise you, start your day seeking the Lord. And I think you will find out that you'll remind yourself that there's nothing that you and God can't handle together on that day. Everybody have a great day. God bless.
God bless you.
God bless you.